I lost everything when I discovered my husband was a criminal wanted by the FBI. My family kicked me out. Now that I've made $1.6 million, they want to reconcile. Before I get into what really happened, you need to understand where I was coming from. I was 29, working as a digital marketing manager at a tech company in Austin, and I thought I had my life completely under control. A 1,200 square foot condo in South Austin that I owned outright, a 2019 BMW 330i in the garage, an emergency fund of $45,000 earning 4.2% in a high-yield savings account, married for 4 years to Daniel, a petroleum engineer. The two of us pulling in a combined $165,000 a year after taxes. It looked like the perfect script for upwardly mobile American middle class. My mom, Linda, a retired teacher at 58, always said at family gatherings that I was the success story among all the cousins. My dad, Robert, an accountant who'd worked at the same firm for 35 years, beamed with pride when I showed him my W-2. "Sweetheart, you achieved what I always dreamed of," he'd say, patting my shoulder with that excessive force of someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life too. Daniel was the ideal son-in-law, 6'2", hair always perfectly styled, showed up to Sunday dinners at my parents' house with flowers for mom and craft beer for dad. He could talk football without trying too hard, helped carry groceries, always offered to pick up the check when we all went out. My sister-in-law Sarah, married to my younger brother Pete, always commented with envy, "God, Marina, you're so lucky to find a guy like that." Looking back, all the signs were there. The meetings Daniel took in the bedroom with the door locked, speaking too quietly for me to hear. The bank statements he kept in a locked drawer, saying it was to better organize our investments. The work trips that stretched from Thursday to Monday, always to cities I could never confirm actually had ExxonMobil offices when I Googled them. The women's perfume I'd smell occasionally in his car. He said it was from his coworker he carpooled with. In hindsight, I was living in a carefully constructed bubble. But at that moment, in March 2023, I could only see the perfect surface of our lives. Annual vacations to the Bahamas, joint checking account that always had money. Plans to start a family when life settles down a bit more. Daniel talked about it a lot, about how he wanted to be a present father, different from his dad who traveled for work all the time. The first crack in the facade came on a Tuesday, March 14th. I remember the date because it was my grandmother's birthday. She'd died 5 years earlier, and I always get a bit melancholy on that day. I got home at 7:30 p.m., normal time, expecting to find Daniel watching Netflix on the couch like always. But the apartment was empty. No note, no message, just silence. I tried calling him. Phone went straight to voicemail. I figured dead battery, maybe a meeting that ran late. I heated up leftover takeout pad thai and watched 2 episodes of Friends to kill time. Daniel never showed. The next morning, getting worried, I called ExxonMobil's HR department. The representative was polite but direct. "Ma'am, we don't have any employee by that name in our records." I repeated his full name. Daniel Augustin Mendez. She checked again. Nothing. I asked to speak with a supervisor, explained that my husband had worked there for 6 years, that I knew some of his colleagues. The supervisor was patient, did a broader search. No, Daniel Mendez had worked for the company in the past 10 years. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. Daniel didn't work at ExxonMobil, had never worked at ExxonMobil, so where was his money coming from? Where did the $6,500 he religiously deposited into our joint account every 5th of the month come from? I ran to the bedroom, picked the locked drawer with a bobby pin. My hands were shaking so bad it took 5 minutes. Inside, I found a stack of bank statements from accounts I didn't know existed. A Bank of America account with strange transactions, deposits of $50,000, $80,000, $120,000 coming and going at irregular intervals, transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, Malta. Name is I'd never heard Larissa Medeiros, Carla Santos, Simone Oliveira. My first reaction was denial. There had to be a logical explanation. Daniel was an investor, maybe. Had side businesses he didn't tell me about to protect me. These women were business partners, clients, anything except what my stomach already knew it was. I called my best friend Claudia, who works at the Federal Reserve. Asked her to check Daniel's SSN unofficially, just to be sure. She hesitated, said it was against regulations, but eventually agreed. She called me back 2 hours later, voice tense. "Marina, you need to come here. Now." In her office, Claudia closed the door and showed me her computer screen. Daniel's SSN appeared in 17 different investigations by the IRS and FinCEN in suspected money laundering, tax evasion, racketeering. There was an active warrant for his arrest issued in January. He was wanted by the FBI. "Marina," Claudia held my hand across the desk. "Your husband isn't who you think he is." I drove home in complete shock, sat on the living room couch, staring at walls that suddenly seemed strange, hostile. The 65-inch TV Daniel had bought with some extra freelance money. The mahogany sideboard that cost $3,200 and he paid cash. The wine fridge I thought was excessive, but he insisted every successful couple should have. All of it had been bought with dirty money. I was living in a house built on crimes I couldn't even imagine. My phone rang. It was my mom. "Honey, did you see the news today?" "No. Why?" "There's a story about a money laundering scheme. One of the people involved has the same name as Daniel, different last name, but ... I hung up without explaining. Ran to the computer, went to CNN's website. There it was. FBI raids target $50 million money laundering ring. On the list of wanted suspects, a photo of Daniel, not the last name. I knew he appeared as Daniel Augustine Silva, not Mendez, but it was him. The face that had slept next to me for 4 years. The man who said he loved me. The guy who had keys to my apartment and access to my bank accounts. The next 48 hours passed like a movie on fast forward. I froze all our joint accounts. Changed the locks. Called my lawyer, Mr. Morrison, who'd known me since I bought the condo. He arrived 2 hours later with 2 colleagues specializing in criminal defense and a forensic accountant. "Marina, you need to understand how serious this is," Mr. Morrison said, spreading documents across the kitchen table. "If they can prove you had knowledge of your husband's activities, you could be indicted as a co-conspirator. Money laundering carries 3 to 10 years in federal prison." I started shaking. I'd never even cheated on my taxes. Never gotten a speeding ticket. And now I was being investigated for organized crime. The forensic accountant, a bald man in his 50s named Reynolds, reviewed all my bank statements from the past 5 years. The questions he asked were terrifying. "Do you know where the money your husband deposited monthly came from? Did you question when your standard of living improved dramatically? Did you sign any documents you didn't read completely?" The answer to almost everything was no. I'd been a trusting wife, maybe too naive. Never questioned when Daniel got a raise. Never asked why he always paid bills in cash. Never found it strange he had no work friends or never took me to company parties. On Friday, 3 days after Daniel disappeared, the FBI knocked on my door. It was 6 a.m. I woke up to that hard, rhythmic knocking that only cops make. 2 agents, a serious blonde woman and a young man who looked like he hadn't slept. They had a search warrant. "Are you Marina Santos Mendez?" "Yes, we need to search the premises. You have the right to have the search supervised and to have an attorney present." I called Mr. Morrison with hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. He arrived in 15 minutes, still in pajamas under his suit. We both watched the agents tear apart my life. They took Daniel's computer, tablets, external hard drives I didn't even know existed. Documents from a folder hidden behind the guest room closet. The blonde agent, who introduced herself as Agent Christina, called me aside while her partner finished the search. "Marina, I'm going to be straight with you. Your husband is involved in something very serious. They laundered over $50 million in the past 3 years through shell companies and ghost accounts. If you have any information about his whereabouts or activities, it's better to cooperate now." I told them everything I knew, which was practically nothing. The agent looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. Finally, she handed me a card. "If he contacts you, call us immediately. And Marina, get a good lawyer. This is going to get ugly." After they left, I sat on the living room floor and cried for 3 straight hours. Not just because Daniel had disappeared. Not just because I discovered my marriage was a lie, but because my entire life, everything I'd built, was crumbling before my eyes and I couldn't do anything to stop it. The phone rang. It was my dad. "Marina, I just saw on CNN. Is it true the FBI was at the house?" "Dad, I can explain ... You don't need to explain anything, sweetheart. Come here, you and your things now." His voice was different, more serious. more distant. Like he was talking to a stranger, not the daughter who'd always been the family's pride. I went to my parents' house that same afternoon, just with 2 suitcases of clothes. The condo I'd bought with so much pride 5 years earlier was sealed for investigation. The car was impounded. Bank accounts frozen. In 72 hours, I'd gone from successful woman in West Austin to refugee at my parents' house in Cedar Park. The change in family dynamics was immediate. My dad, who used to greet me with hugs and smiles, now barely looked me in the eye. My mom asked those indirect questions, full of insinuation. Honey, you really didn't know anything, because, you know, couples who live together. It's hard to hide this kind of thing. Pete, my brother, was the worst. At the first family dinner after I moved in, he said, Marina, you need to understand this is affecting all of us. I work at a private school. If the parents find out my sister is involved with criminals, ... He's not a criminal, I interrupted. And I'm not involved in anything. Oh yeah, then why did the FBI search your house? Why are your assets frozen? You think everyone's an idiot, Marina. Sarah, who'd always been sweet to me, now avoided conversation. When she needed to say something, she used a formal tone, like I was an unwelcome guest overstaying my welcome. The first 2 weeks were the worst. I slept in my teenage bedroom, with Sandy and Junior posters still taped to the wall, trying to rebuild my life over the phone. Called friends, work colleagues, professional contacts. The reactions were always the same: awkward silence, followed by vague excuses about not being able to get involved or needing to keep distance until things get resolved. My boss at the agency, Rodrigo, who always praised my work, called me for a video chat on March 30th. I was expecting words of support, maybe paid leave until the situation normalized. Instead, he was direct. Marina, you understand the company can't afford to be associated with this kind of scandal. We're going to have to let you go. It's a difficult decision, but I closed the laptop before he finished talking. 15 minutes later, I got an email from HR confirming my termination for cause due to behavior incompatible with company values. 4 years of impeccable work, campaigns that generated millions in revenue, clients who specifically requested to work with me. None of that meant anything when your name appeared in the news, next to words like money laundering and organized crime. I lost my job on a Tuesday. Thursday, my best friend from college, Patricia, called saying she needed time to process all this, and it would be better if we didn't talk for a while. Saturday, I got a notification from the bank. My personal account, which had nothing to do with Daniel, was being monitored by the IRS. Any transaction over $1,000 would be automatically reported to authorities. It was like being trapped in an invisible prison. Technically free, but unable to live normally. Couldn't get a job because my name appeared on Google linked to the scandal. Couldn't rent an apartment because landlords did background checks. Couldn't even open an account at a different bank because my SSN was flagged in check systems as person under judicial investigation. At home, the tension increased daily. My dad started making comments about how long I was going to stay there. My mom began dividing utility bills by number of people, including my share, even though I had no income. Pete openly said my presence was complicating his family's life. Sarah doesn't want to come here on Sundays anymore because of you, he said in an argument in May. The kids ask why Aunt Marina is always sad, why she doesn't have her own house anymore. It's hard to explain that Auntie got involved with criminals. I didn't get involved with criminals, I shouted. I was deceived like everyone else. Come on, Marina, drop the act. Nobody's that innocent. You lived with the guy for 4 years. Traveled together, bought expensive things. You never questioned anything, at least admit you were negligent. The word negligent echoed in my head for days. Was that what everyone thought? That I'd been negligent? That somehow I deserved what was happening to me? In June, things got worse. I received a subpoena to testify at the FBI field office. Mr. Morrison accompanied me. We reviewed my version of the facts 1,000 times on the way. Only answer what they ask, he instructed. Don't volunteer information. Don't try to be too helpful. The interrogation lasted for hours. Agent Christina and a federal prosecutor bombarded me with questions about Daniel, about our relationship, about our finances. They showed me photos of him with other women, the Larissas, Carlas, and Simones from the bank statements. He was smiling in those photos, embracing them, clearly intimate. In some, he wore a different wedding ring than the one he wore with me. Do you recognize these women, Marina? No, never heard of them. Never. Your husband never mentioned trips to Miami, Dallas, Denver, the cities he said he went to for ExxonMobil. Except now I knew he was lying about everything. No, I mean, he traveled, but said it was for work. Work where, Marina? You already said you discovered he never worked at ExxonMobil. I didn't know what to answer anymore. Each question made me seem more guilty, more negligent, more complicit. At the end, the prosecutor looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt. Marina, you have two options. Either you were being elaborately deceived for 4 years, which makes you seem extremely naive, or you knew something and are lying to us, which makes you a criminal. Either way, your life as you knew it is over. I left the FBI field office feeling like a ghost. Mr. Morrison tried to be optimistic on the way back. We have no evidence against you. They'll probably dismiss your case in a few months. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about the prosecutor's phrase, "Your life as you knew it is over." He was right. I got home to find my parents watching the evening news. The story about the operation was on. When Daniel's photo appeared on screen, my mom sighed deeply and turned off the TV. My dad got up from his recliner without looking at me and locked himself in the bedroom. My mom stood in the living room, fidgeting with the remote. Marina, she finally said, you need to understand our position. Your father's worked at the same company for 35 years. Never had even a warning. Now his colleagues are talking about you, about this whole story. The family name is being tarnished. Mom, I didn't do anything wrong. I know, honey, but sometimes it doesn't matter if you did something wrong. What matters is what people think you did. That night, lying in my teenage bed, I had a terrible epiphany. I was alone. Completely alone. Daniel had disappeared, taking my financial and emotional stability. Friends had abandoned me for fear of reputational contamination. Family tolerated me but didn't support me. I was 29 years old and living like a refugee in my own parents' house. I decided I needed to act. Couldn't keep waiting for other people to decide my fate. The following Monday, I woke up at 5:30 a.m., showered, dressed like I had an important appointment and left the house. I spent my last savings, $1,200. I had in an old account on an intensive freelance digital marketing course. For 2 weeks, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., I learned everything about paid traffic management, content creation, sales automation. At night, I built my portfolio, created proposals, researched potential clients. When I got home, exhausted, my parents asked those indirect questions. How was your little course today? When are you going to be able to pay your share of the bills? The first client appeared in July, a women's clothing store in Round Rock that needed to sell dead inventory. I agreed to do it for $300, well below market rate, just to have something on my resume. I worked 16 hours a day for 2 weeks. The campaign generated $18,000 in sales for the client. She was so satisfied she referred me to 2 other stores. By August, I was making $1,500 a month. Little compared to my previous standard, but enough to contribute to household expenses and have some dignity back. My parents became less hostile, more tolerant. Pete stopped making comments about when I was going to leave. But the peace didn't last long. In September, Mr. Morrison called with news. The FBI had found Daniel. He was arrested in a joint operation with Interpol in Lisbon. Along with him, they arrested a woman named Carla Santos, one of those who appeared in the bank statements. In the seized documents, there was evidence they'd been living together for 2 years. They had a joint account, an apartment rented, in both names, even a car bought together. Marina, I need to prepare you for what's coming, Mr. Morrison said. Daniel is going to try for a plea deal. He'll probably try to blame other people to reduce his own sentence. There's a possibility he'll try to incriminate you. How so? He might claim you knew about his activities, that you were partners in crime, that you helped launder money knowingly. It's a common tactic. I felt the world spin. It wasn't enough to have been betrayed, deceived, abandoned. Now the man I loved was going to try to put me in prison to save his own skin. The plea came in October. Daniel claimed I was the financial mastermind of the operation, that I guided investments, suggested international transfer routes, knew all the shell companies. He invented conversations that never happened, created a version of reality where I was the villain and he was the innocent victim who fell for my manipulation. Mr. Morrison showed me the documents with the face of someone Watching a car accident in slow motion. It's all lies, obviously. But now we're going to have to prove it. The case will last at least 2 years. They'll freeze all your assets again. They'll investigate every penny you've earned in the past 5 years. That night, during dinner, I told my family what was happening. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Put down his fork and looked at me with a coldness I'd never seen before. You need to understand, we can no longer harbor you here. If you become a defendant in a criminal case, this will destroy the entire family's reputation. I have a retirement to protect. Pete has his career. Mom, do you agree with this? My mom couldn't look me in the eyes. Honey, you're an adult. You have to solve your own problems. Pete was even more direct. Marina, you brought this mess into our house. We helped you while we could, but now this is affecting my family. Sarah is scared to come here. The girls are asking why everyone's always nervous. You need to leave. I had a week to get out. I spent the next few days desperate, calling anyone I knew, distant cousins I hadn't talked to in years, college classmates who might feel sorry for me, even ex-boyfriends I'd ended things well with. Nobody wanted to help. Everyone had valid excuses. Apartment too small. Small children. Husband who wouldn't be comfortable. It's nothing personal, Marina, but you understand our position. On Saturday, the last day of the deadline my parents had given me, I was sitting on the front steps of their house with 2 suitcases and a backpack, all my possessions packed there. It was October 15th, it was raining, and I had nowhere to go. Claudia, my friend from the Federal Reserve, showed up at 2 p.m. She'd offered to give me a ride wherever you're going. Problem, I had nowhere to go. Marina, I can't take you to my house, she explained, visibly embarrassed. My husband works in the public sector too. If someone found out I was helping, I understood. Everyone understood except me, who had taken too long to realize I was completely alone in the world. Claudia dropped me off at a cheap motel near the Greyhound station, $50 a night, windowless room, mold smell that stuck to clothes. I had $680 total. Money for 2 weeks if I ate ramen and didn't spend on anything but the room. I lay on the hard bed, staring at the ceiling yellowed by water stains. And finally understood the complete dimension of my fall. In 6 months, I'd lost my husband, house, car, job, friends, family, and reputation. I was living in a 5th-rate motel room, with less money than I'd had during college internships 10 years earlier. But something strange happened that night. I stopped crying. Not because I was okay, but because I'd finally hit rock bottom. Couldn't fall any lower than that. The only possible direction was up. The next morning, Monday, October 16th, I woke up at 6 a.m. and made a decision. I was going to rebuild my life from scratch. Wasn't going to wait for the case to end. Wasn't going to wait for people to forgive me for crimes I didn't commit. Wasn't going to wait for my family to change their minds. I was going to work like I'd never worked before and prove to everyone, especially to myself, that I was stronger than they imagined. For the next 3 months, I lived like a hermit. Woke up at 5:30 a.m., went down to the motel lobby where there was free Wi-Fi, worked until 10 p.m. looking for clients and executing projects. Lunch was white bread with bologna. Dinner was ramen or fried eggs. Showered every other day to save soap. Washed clothes in the motel sink, using powdered detergent I bought in 4-ounce packages. The first clients were small beauty salons, neighborhood stores, dentists who wanted to advertise services on Facebook. I charged cheap, worked double, delivered results that impressed. One client, owner of a pet store in South Austin, was so satisfied she paid me a $200 bonus and referred me to 5 friends. In December, I moved to a shared apartment in East Austin. Small room, twin bed, but it had a desk to work and good internet. I shared the space with 3 other people, a medical student, an English teacher, and an unemployed graphic designer. It was strange going back to roommate life after years of married life, but also liberating. Nobody there judged me for my past. By the end of 2023, I was making $3,200 a month. Still far from what I earned before, but enough to support myself, without depending on anyone. I had a list of 15 regular clients, some paying $800 monthly for traffic management. I was building a new reputation, based on current work, not the past. The criminal case continued dragging. Daniel had been extradited to the U.S. in November and was in federal prison in Colorado. Mr. Morrison managed to dismantle most of his allegations. proving I didn't have technical knowledge or access to the systems he used to launder money. But the case would still take at least a year to conclude. In January 2024, something happened that changed everything. I was working on a project for a chain of gyms when I got an unexpected call. It was Roger Almeida, owner of one of Austin's largest digital marketing agencies. He'd seen my work through a mutual client and wanted to hire me as a partner. "Marina, I'll be direct," he said during our meeting at his office in downtown Austin. "I know about your situation. I read about the case, about your ex-husband, about everything. And I don't care. Actually, I care to the point of thinking you're exactly what my company needs." "How so?" "You lost everything and managed to get back on your feet in less than a year. That tells me more about your character than any degree or professional reference. Besides, your results speak for themselves. The campaign you did for the pet store chain generated 340% ROI. That's not luck. It's competence. The proposal was tempting. 40% participation in the company. Fixed salary of $6,000 plus profit sharing, health insurance, benefits. In exchange, I'd bring my client list and take over new business development. I accepted on the spot. In March 2024, exactly 1 year after Daniel's disappearance, I was back in the game. Not at the same level as before. Still lived in a shared apartment. Still took Ubers because I couldn't finance a car. But I had financial stability again, growth prospects. And most importantly, I'd recovered my professional self. The first time I appeared at a family gathering after almost a year away was at my dad's 60th birthday in April. I arrived by Uber, wearing a new Zara blazer and carrying a bottle of Johnny Walker Red that cost $45. It wasn't showing off. It was a statement. I was back. The family's reaction was revealing. My mom greeted me with exaggerated politeness, like I was a distant relative who only shows up on special occasions. My dad thanked me for the gift but didn't make an effort to talk. Pete and Sarah were polite, but cold, answering my questions about the kids with monosyllables. During dinner, when I talked about the partnership at the agency, about new clients, about the possibility of renting my own apartment again, I noticed something strange in their expressions. It wasn't pride or happiness about my success. It was something between surprise and discomfort. Like the fact that I'd recovered so quickly somehow invalidated their decision to abandon me when I needed them most. Sarah was the first to verbalize. "Wow, Marina, great that you managed to handle things on your own. We were worried at the time, but in the end it was better this way, right? You got stronger." I looked at her for a long moment, processing what I'd just heard. It was better this way. Like throwing me out when I was most vulnerable had been a favor. Like denying me emotional and financial support when my world collapsed had been a planned life lesson. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "It was great being abandoned by family when I needed them most. Highly recommend the experience." The silence that followed was embarrassing. My dad cleared his throat and changed the subject to football. Pete started looking at his phone. My mom got up to check dessert in the kitchen. I left right after coffee, making up an excuse about an appointment the next day. Actually, I just couldn't stand being there anymore. Pretending everything was normal, pretending I'd forgotten how they treated me when I was at rock bottom. In the Uber home, I had a revelation. I no longer wanted their approval. For a whole year, during my entire reconstruction, part of me hoped they'd recognize their mistake, apologize, welcome me back into the family. But that night I finally understood it would never happen. They'd abandoned me because it was convenient for them, and now that I was doing well again, they wanted to pretend nothing had happened. In May 2024, what Mr. Morrison had predicted happened. The Justice Department offered to dismiss my case for lack of evidence. Officially, I was free. No longer investigated, no longer a suspect, no longer blacklisted. My assets were unfrozen. What was left of them? From the condo, I managed to recover some furniture that the FBI released after investigation. The car had been auctioned to pay debts from Daniel's scheme. The joint account had been emptied before he even disappeared, but at least I had my freedom back. With the dismissal, my professional life took off. Clients who'd avoided me during the investigation started looking for me again. The agency grew 180% in the second half of 2024. In December, Roger offered to increase my participation to 50% of the company. "Marina, you transformed this place," he said during our annual results meeting. "We billed $920,000 this year. Last year, before you arrived, it was $320,000. You're not just a partner. You're the soul of this company. On the other hand, my personal life remained a desert. Dating was out of the question. How do you explain to someone that your ex-husband is in prison for money laundering? How do you trust again after being so completely deceived? Friendships were scarce. Most people still associated me with the scandal, even after dismissal. But loneliness taught me valuable things. I learned to enjoy my own company. Started reading again, something I hadn't done since college. Began therapy with a psychologist named Dr. Helena, who helped me process everything that had happened without victimization or self-pity. Marina, she said in a session in March 2025, you went through multiple betrayals. Your husband, your friends, your family, everyone abandoned you when you needed them most, but you survived. More than that, you prospered. That says something very important about who you really are. In April 2025, 2 years after everything started, I got an unexpected call. It was Pete. Marina, we need to talk. Can you come for dinner Sunday? I could. Why? Sarah and I talked a lot about how things went 2 years ago. We want to apologize. I went, more out of curiosity than desire for reconciliation. Their house was exactly the same beige and white decoration, same downy fabric, softener smell, same family photos on the walls, including some where I appeared, which surprised me. Sarah prepared my favorite food, shrimp and grits with cornbread. The girls, now 8 and 6, received me with genuine joy, asking why I didn't come anymore, if I still lived with grandparents, if I had a car again. During dinner, Pete and Sarah took turns apologizing. They talked about how scared they were at the time, how they made decisions based on fear, how they regretted not supporting me when I needed it. Marina, Sarah held my hand across the table. I lost sleep many nights thinking about you alone in that motel. We should have helped you, should have believed in you from the beginning. Pete was more direct. Sis, I was a coward. I chose to protect my nuclear family and left you adrift. It was pure selfishness. I have no excuse. I listened to everything in silence, observing their faces, trying to detect sincerity or manipulation. They seemed genuinely sorry, but there was also something else there, a need for absolution, to see themselves again as good people who just made an error in judgment. Thank you for the apologies, I finally said. I accept that you were scared and made decisions that seemed right at the time, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. You abandoned me when I needed you most. That changed our relationship forever. Pete tried to argue, but we can rebuild, right? Go back to being a family. I looked at him, at Sarah, at the girls playing in the next room, and felt deep sadness. Not anger, not resentment, just sadness for lost innocence. I don't know if it's possible, I replied. Trust is like a vase. When it breaks, you can glue the pieces back together, but it's never the same. The cracks always show. I left without promises of reconciliation, but with something I didn't expect, peace. I no longer needed their approval to feel complete. I no longer needed them to recognize my worth, to know who I was. Today, in August 2025, I'm back to my previous standard of living. Own apartment again, this time a 1,400 square foot loft in South Austin. New car, a Honda Accord hybrid, I bought cash. Trip booked to Europe in September, alone, because I learned I prefer my own company to the company of people who abandoned me at the first difficulty. The agency bills $1.6 million a year now. I'm considering opening a branch in Dallas. My financial life is better than it's ever been. Ironic, right? I had to lose everything to discover what I was really capable of. Daniel was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He'll be locked up until 2036. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about me, if he feels remorse for what he did. But those thoughts pass quickly. He's part of my past now, an expensive lesson about trusting people too much. My parents tried rapprochement several times. They call on my birthday, send messages at Christmas, ask to talk about the past. I respond politely but keep my distance. I forgave, because resentment would only hurt me. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or trusting again. Pete and Sarah insist on invitations to lunches, barbecues, the girls' birthdays. I go sometimes, maintain civility, talk about small things, but we're not close like we were before. We won't be. The truth is, I discovered something important in these 2 years. Family isn't just who shares your blood. Family is who stays. When everything falls apart. And in my case, that was me and nobody else. I'm not saying everything's perfect now. I still have trust issues, still go to therapy every week. Still have nightmares, sometimes about being abandoned, still flinch when my doorbell rings unexpectedly, but I'm healing. We all are. Building something new from the broken pieces of our past. Something stronger, something chosen, something real. Sometimes people ask if I'll ever reconcile with my parents, if I'll ever let them meet my future children, if I'll ever forgive them for what they did. I don't have answers to those questions yet. Maybe someday, maybe never. But what I do know is this: I'm not defined by what they did to me anymore. I'm defined by what I built after, by the person I chose to become, by the life I chose to create. Sometimes I still wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about how my life could have been different if Daniel hadn't deceived me. If my family had supported me, if I'd been less trusting or more suspicious. But those thoughts pass quickly because the truth is, I'm better now than I was before. Stronger, more independent, more aware of my own worth. It's not the life I planned, but it's the life I built with my own hands after everything collapsed. Last month, I was featured in Austin Business Journal as one of the 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. The article talked about my agency's rapid growth, my innovative marketing strategies, my resilience in the face of adversity. They mentioned the federal investigation briefly, but framed it as part of my comeback story rather than a scandal that defined me. Roger and I are opening that Dallas branch in January. We've already signed a lease in Deep Ellum, hired 3 employees, landed our first major client, a tech startup that's paying us $15,000 a month for full-service digital marketing. I'm flying there twice a week now, building something that's entirely mine. Entirely clean, entirely separate from the wreckage of my old life. I bought a house last week. Not a condo, not an apartment, but an actual house with a yard and a 2-car garage. It's a 1950s ranch style that needs work, but it's mine. No cosigners, no joint ownership, no one else's name on the deed. Just Marina Santos, homeowner, entrepreneur, survivor. The first night I slept there, alone in the empty master bedroom, with just an air mattress and a pillow, I thought about that motel room where I'd hit rock bottom 2 years ago. The mold smell, the broken air conditioner, the feeling that my life was over. How wrong I was. My life wasn't over, it was just beginning. I still don't date much. Went on a few coffee dates through friends, but nothing serious. It's hard to explain to someone new why you Google their name obsessively, why you ask to see their driver's license on the second date, why you want to meet their friends and coworkers before things get serious. Most guys think I'm paranoid or damaged. Maybe I am, a little, but I'd rather be alone than naive. Dr. Helena says I'm protecting myself, which is normal after trauma. She also says I might be using my hypervigilance as an excuse to avoid vulnerability. She's probably right. But for now, being alone feels safer than being fooled again. My parents called last week. It was my mom's 60th birthday, and they were having a family dinner. Pete had told them about my house, about the new business expansion, about the magazine article. They wanted to celebrate with me, they said. Wanted to be part of my success. I declined politely. Sent a nice flower arrangement instead, with a card that said "Happy birthday, Mom. Wishing you health and happiness." Professional, distant, final. Because here's what I've learned: you can't go backward. You can't unknow what you know about people. You can't unfeel the abandonment, the betrayal, the loneliness of being completely on your own when your world collapsed. You can forgive, and I have, but you can't forget. And you shouldn't. Pete texted me afterward. She cried when she read your card. She misses you. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That I missed her too? That I wished things were different? Maybe I do, sometimes, but missing someone and trusting them again are two different things. The house is coming along nicely. I hired contractors to update the kitchen, refinish the hardwood floors, paint everything in soft grays and whites. It's going to be beautiful when it's done. A sanctuary I built for myself, by myself. No ghosts, no lies, no hidden bank accounts or secret lives. Just clean lines and honest money, and the quiet satisfaction of building something real. Roger keeps joking that I should write a book about my experience. From federal investigation to Forbes 30 under 30, he suggests. It would be a bestseller. I laugh it off, but sometimes I think he's right. Maybe there are other people out there who need to hear that you can survive complete devastation, that you can build something better from the ashes. That being alone isn't the same as being broken. But I'm not ready for that level of exposure yet. Maybe I never will be. For now, it's enough to know that I survived. That I thrived. That I turned the worst thing that ever happened to me into the foundation for the best version of myself. Tonight, I'm sitting in my backyard, watching the sunset over Austin. I have a glass of wine from a bottle I actually bought, with money I actually earned, in a house I actually own. My phone is charging inside, but I haven't checked it in hours. No crisis to manage, no emergency to handle, no one else's chaos bleeding into my carefully constructed peace. In a few minutes, I'll go inside and make dinner for one. Tomorrow, I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and check on my 15 active client campaigns, review proposals for 3 potential new accounts, and have a video call with the Dallas team about our upcoming product launch. It's a good life. Not the life I expected at 29, but a life I earned. Every client contract, every dollar in my bank account, every square foot of this house, it all came from me. From my work, my resilience, my refusal to let other people's betrayals define my worth. And you know what? That might be the most valuable thing of all. Not just knowing I can survive disaster, but knowing I can thrive because of it. Knowing that when everyone else gave up on me, I didn't give up on myself. The sun is setting now, painting my backyard golden. In the distance, I can hear kids playing, dogs barking, the normal sounds of people living their normal lives. I'm part of that now, part of the world again, but on my own terms. Tomorrow marks exactly 2.5 years since Daniel disappeared and my old life ended. I used to think of March 14th as the worst day of my life. Now I'm starting to think it might have been the best, not because of what happened, but because of what it forced me to become. A survivor, a fighter, someone who builds rather than breaks, someone who stands alone not because she has to, but because she can. And that, nobody can ever take away from.
What did you think of this story? What advice would you give to the person in question? Let me know in the comments. I'm always reading what you have to say. If this story got you hooked, even for a second, hit that like button and subscribe, so you don't miss the next one. And seriously, don't leave yet. The videos on your screen are just as crazy, emotional, or even more unexpected. Go ahead, click one and keep watching. You won't regret it.